In today's video, I wanted to talk about who I think is the most underrated player in the NBA right now, and that's Robert Williams, the starting center of the Boston Celtics, who I would honestly say right now that he is definitely a top 15 center in the NBA, and I'm sure that probably no one else has this opinion. That's just how underrated I really think he is, and this is coming from a Raptors fan too, a guy who really doesn't like the Celtics, but I just have to give so much credit to what Robert Williams has done and how under the radar he really is as a player, and that's what I'm going to be analyzing in today's video, is why I think he's the most underrated player in the NBA and just how good he is on both ends of the floor. So before we get into it, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Only 8% of you guys watching my videos in the last months are subscribed still. This number hasn't really changed at all, so make sure you guys subscribe if you're new. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's start off by talking about Robert Williams' offensive game, and then we'll talk about his defensive game. His defensive game is really where most of his value comes, but on the offensive side of the floor, he's really nothing special, but he still does a fantastic job of playing the role that he's given of the traditional center. And in terms of the guys in the NBA that still play this role, being the traditional center, Williams is definitely one of the best in the NBA of playing this role offensively. He's definitely not asked to do a lot. He's only averaging 6 field goal attempts per game, but he's extremely efficient, takes advantage of his opportunities, and like I said, plays his role very well. He's a very good screener. He allows the Celtics offense to flow very well because of this. An overall pretty good playmaker, and we'll look at some stats with that in a minute as well. And overall, he just does a fantastic job in the pick and roll. I mean, he's one of the best centers in the NBA, in my opinion, at rolling to the basket and getting easy baskets around the rim. He does a very good job of rolling at the right time and knowing how to get past the defense in the pick and roll and really be one of the best lob threats in the NBA. I mean, pretty much every time you see this guy score, it's going to be around the rim, and pretty much half the time you're seeing him go up for a chance to score at the rim, it's on a lob. He's just that good of a lob threat. There's multiple times per game where he's able to roll to the rim off of the pick and roll and just get easy baskets, and you have to give some credit to the playmakers on the Celtics as well for just allowing him to get these chances, but you really have to give credit for him for really allowing the play to happen in the first place because of how effectively he's able to roll to the basket. And that's really where his main value comes offensively, is just being a lob threat and being a good screener, good overall playmaker for a big man. And like I said already for the millionth time now, he just plays his role so well. We will look at some overall stats for Robert Williams so far this season. He's averaging 10 points per game, which is pretty much exactly what he's asked to do. And he's extremely efficient, like I mentioned. He is literally shooting 75% from the field so far this season. And I know it's because he gets all of his baskets around the rim, but you have to give him credit for being good at that. Just like I mentioned, he's such a good lob threat, and this high of an efficiency speaks to that and how good he is at being a threat for lobs around the rim and being an efficient scorer down low in the restricted area. So that's his overall field goal percentage. Same with his true shooting. He doesn't really shoot any threes, and his free throw shooting is around average for the center position, so his true shooting is also 75%, which, by the way, both of these are actually number one in the NBA. I mean, he actually doesn't technically have the qualified amount of attempts per game, I'm guessing, to actually be qualified to technically be considered as the league leader. I don't really know why. I guess that the qualifications might be a little bit more strict this year or something, because he has pretty much played in almost every game this year. But if he was qualified, he would be number one in both of these. Just speaks to how efficient and, like I said, how good of a threat he is around the rim. And then he's also fourth in the NBA in offensive rebounds per game, averaging nearly 4 per game. He does a fantastic job of getting on the glass offensively, and if he's not getting that lob, he can get that offensive rebound pretty much 4 times per game, which is also a big contributor where he gets so many baskets down low. So that's really his overall scoring, and again, he doesn't really do anything offensively or scoring wise other than being a good lob threat in the pick and roll and getting offensive rebounds, cleaning up the glass. But he does it so well that we have to give him credit for that. And not to mention, like I said earlier as well, he's a good playmaker for his position as well, as so far this season, Williams has really shown his ability to be a good screener and an effective screener. A lot of people really say that or a lot of casual fans don't really pay attention to stats like screen assist because they say screening is not a skill, but your ability to actually set effective screens is actually something that not every center in the NBA can do and really has an effect on the flow of your team's offense, and Williams does a really good job of that, not to mention that he's a decent passing big man for his position as well. I mean, a lot of traditional centers in today's NBA don't even really have the good passing aspect to their game. They're not able to create shots that way, but Williams so far this year is averaging almost 2 assists per game, about 1.7 assists per game, especially when he's coming off of the pick and roll and is maybe around the elbow and free throw area. He can do a good job of finding cutting teammates or finding teammates that are open in the corners for three or on the wings. He can do a decent job of that for being a traditional big man, and like I mentioned, he's also a great screener, which adds value to his team as well. So far this year, putting up 3 screen assists per game, and that resulting in 7 screen assist points per game. So you can definitely see the translation there and how effective and how valuable that can be to his team, especially when you're playing with guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who get a lot of their points off of just pull-up threes or coming off of screens on the perimeter to pop those three-pointers or run pick and rolls with Williams and all that kind of stuff. So that can definitely add some value to the way that this Celtics offense functions and is something that is quite valuable overall to their team. So you can see overall that Williams does not do a lot offensively other than what he's really asked to do as a traditional big man, and of that he does a fantastic job of that, and that's what really has to factor in to how good of an overall player he is. Now, while on the offensive side of the floor, Robert Williams is never really described as anything special, he definitely should be defensively. I mean, this guy legitimately has a case to sneak onto the all-defensive second team this season, which is insane at this point in the NBA with the competition there is at the center position, with how many good defensive big men we have in the league today. That would just be absolutely insane, and he probably won't make it, but that doesn't take away from just how good of an overall defensive anchor he is. I mean, he truly is a defensive anchor for the Celtics team. He's one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, a pretty good pick and roll defender, and even if he gets switched onto a guard on the perimeter, he still does a really good job of guarding there, especially if that guard is going to drive into the paint. They definitely shouldn't try to do that because Williams is an insane shot blocker. He can test a ton of shots around the rim and is overall a very good rim protector. I think he can definitely still improve his perimeter defense a little bit more. When guys are shooting threes, he can do a little bit of a better job of getting out there and maybe becoming a little bit more coordinated and contesting shots a little bit better, but that is his only weakness defensively, and it's a very small weakness. When we talk about his interior defense, it's just absolutely insane, and that's where he is 95% of the time anyway, so we shouldn't even really factor in his at times weak perimeter defense into this, because his interior defense is insane, and even just his presence has a huge effect on the opposing team's offense, because all it takes is 1 or 2 times per game for someone to drive into the paint and get swatted by Robert Williams, and all of a sudden that player, especially if they're a young player, all of a sudden does not want to go into the paint that much more often, and his presence can really allow some of those smaller or younger players to drive into the paint and maybe pass up a shot that they shouldn't have or end up taking bad shots, and his presence under the rim also allows his team to trust him more, because now some of those wing defenders aren't going to be shrinking the floor a little bit more, and they can really just focus on staying on their man. And I think this is really just Robert Williams is not only his shot blocking ability, but just his overall presence around the rim is what's having a huge effect on the Celtics defense so far this year, and why they're a top 7 defensive team in the NBA so far this season. I mean, other than that, their depth hasn't been great, and their overall offensive abilities have definitely disappointed this year, which is something I did predict, by the way. I said that they would be the 10 seed, but something that has been a bright spot for them is defense, and we should really owe it all to Robert Williams because of how good of a rim protector he's been. When we look at some stats here, I don't really usually like to look at stats for defense, Williams because I don't think they tell the full story, but for Williams, they mostly do, as he is ranking 3rd in the NBA right now in blocks per game with over 2 per game. He's 16th in the NBA in contested shots per game with about 10.6 per game, which is also very impressive. And then he also has a defended field goal percentage of 42.1%, which is basically the field goal percentage you hold opponents to when they're being guarded by you. And this is extremely impressive for a center, as the average field goal percentage in the NBA right now is around 46 to 47%. And to think that Robert Williams is pretty much defending all of these shots in the paint and most of them right under the rim in the restricted area, it's extremely impressive that he has a defended field goal percentage about 4.5% below the league average when he's defending shots right under the rim, which is the easiest shot in basketball. That stat right there really speaks to how good of a defender he is. And then just to add on to his rebounding value as well, most of that comes on the offensive side of the floor and how he cleans up the glass, but overall in rebounds in general, he is averaging 9.1 per game so far this year, which is also 18th in the NBA. So to think that Robert Williams is top 20 in both contested shots and rebounding, has a very strong defended field goal percentage at the center position, and is top 3 in block shots per game, that's just absolutely insane and really speaks to his value on the defensive side of the floor and his rebounding and hustle ability. Overall, Robert Williams has definitely been, in my opinion, the most underrated player so far this season. And if today's video didn't convince you that he's a top 15 center in the NBA, I don't really know what to tell you at this point. Maybe just watch him play more, because that's really what, to see his true value, you gotta not only look at these stats, but also just watch to see his true presence on the defensive end of the floor and how effective and dominant of a defender he is, and also how well he plays his role offensively and what he's asked to do on that side of the floor. So that's all I've got for you guys in today's video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to comment down below your thoughts on Robert Williams and who you think is the most underrated player in the NBA right now, and I'll see you all next video.